Modit already there.
Hey, hi, Abhi.
Hey Himesh, hey Modit.
Hey,
Yeah,
hi.
all well on your side?
Yeah,
Yeah, sure. I think yeah, if you don't mind, you guys can switch on your cameras. I still don't see you, but I see you have switched on your cameras, but it's fine. So I mean, we'll let this settle down. In the same time, what I'll do is, just give some brief background about what we have been doing. This is customary. So just a couple of more minutes before we start with the actual event. So some introduction about the Bangalore chapter and what we have been doing with the through these initiatives, and what are the initiatives which are going on currently as part of IITB Alumni Association of chapters, right? So Bangalore chapter luckily has been one of the most proactive group, like we said earlier, and we have been organizing a lot of events, even in the COVID era, and we started in fact with pre-COVID where more than 200 VCs and founders met for the first time. That was in June 2019, and post that when COVID hit, we started I'm sorry for that. Right? Am I audible, Himesh, Modit?
Yeah, Abhishek, you're not audible now. I think we lost you. You were talking about how you organize an event for startups before COVID, and then we lost.
Yeah. I'll just giving some introduction, some of the initiatives that have been taken by a lot of there have been a lot of people backing these events, and there are a lot of people that have been doing this. So and Bangalore has been the proactive chapter so far. So some of the event or some of the initiatives that were launched, and I think in my last talk with Hemant, I pointed out some of them. I would still start if it might help some of the buddy entrepreneurs elsewhere. So, so one chapter initiative, similar initiative is to connect two different chapters. For example, Bangalore and Kolkata chapters, which is called Buddy Chapter Initiative. Right, this was launched by last year, and I think we have been seeing a lot of traction in that chapter. Then we have launched Karnataka outreach initiatives where deliberately we have tried to connect
Smita, do you want to continue with the introduction? I think we lost Abhishek for a while. Oh, I see he's back.
Yeah, really sorry. I don't know, something weird is happening. I'm getting pushed out of the meeting more often. What I'll do is I'll switch off my video. Maybe could be probably because of internet connection on my side. But let's try it out. Yeah. So yeah, I was talking about this initiatives that we have taken, and there are a lot of initiatives that even in Bangalore chapter that has been taken, where there are like hobby based groups, they are like they are the hobby based chapters, or they are like domain specific chapter. For example, if you want to go for analytics, if you want to go for fundraise, if you want to go for event specific, so there are such chapters already created. So do reach out to our Bangalore chapter president Smita for the introduction to those groups, and I think she would be humble enough to add you into those groups which you are interested. So let's start with our event today. We have Imesh and Modit today. Imesh is co-founder with IU Health, and Modit is co-founder with Dozy, right? And today we will be discussing on the challenges that come across when you start for an early stage startup, when you start in health tech specifically in India, right? So welcome, Hemish. Welcome, Modit. We just request you to give brief introduction about yourselves. We'll start with Hemish.
Sure, Abhishek. So, hi everyone. I'm from IITB 2011 batch, elect dual degree. Worked at BCG for 3 years after IIT, 2 years in India, 1 year in New York. I think 2015 is when I came back and figured I wanted to do something of my own. That was also when I think a lot of my batchmates were thinking of starting up. So it was a very good time in general in India to think of doing something of your own. So I started an e-commerce platform called Zepho. We were a marketplace for used goods. We ran that business for about 4 years, exited to Quicker in 2019. And then end of 2019 is when I, along with my other co-founders from that venture itself, were looking for to figure out what next. We still wanted to do something of our own, and I think healthcare was a sector that had gotten us interested for a bunch of reasons. Happy to talk about that later, but that's when we got into healthcare, and what we are trying to do essentially now is create a network of hospitals, so create a branded hospital chain. Uh, but we are trying to do it in a fairly asset light fashion. So we don't own any of our hospitals, we don't run them, but we partner with existing high quality hospitals, and we enable them uh, to be better financially, to serve patients in a better fashion, and in general to improve the quality of healthcare that's being offered at these places. Udit, over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Himesh. So, very inspiring story, I would say. Right. So, hi, I'm Mudit. I'm a batch of 2013 mechanical engineering, hostel six. And what was your hostel, Himesh?
Three.
Hostel three.
I
Okay.
should have mentioned that. That's the
Yes, correct. So hostel six, so after passing out, I used to be actually involved a lot into race cars even in IIT. In fact, I was mentioning last time I was talking to Himesh and Abhishek that I was one of the only guys who built race cars, and therefore used to take those cars to hostel because it was very far from my lab. So I used to go to canteen and to my hostel to have lunch in my own built car. That was fun. Then I joined Altair Engineering, which was into mechanical simulation softwares, where I served many automobile clientele, including Porsche, Honda, Chrysler, even Formula One teams as well. Um, and after working with them very closely for about 2 years, I decided to quit my job, and this was when I had just turned 24. So realization was that I had done many exciting stuff, but nothing which was actually creating impact. Pretty similar to a story of Himesh as well, right? So I started searching out for what I could do, and I found that healthcare in itself was kind of a broken system. While world, even elections to monsoon prediction, everything was so much based on data analytics and everything. Healthcare was really not there. And one of the major problems which I saw was the data collection itself was so painful. As in, you have to put wires, electrodes, right, whatnot, needles to actually capture various amount of healthcare information. And that was the first thing which me and my co-founder wanted to change. And we created Dozy. Dozy is India's first contact-free health data collection platform. So it goes under the mattress. So it doesn't involve anything like a wire connected to the person or electrodes connected to the person. You just place it under the mattress, and from there, it with very high precision gets person's heart, respiration, blood pressure, sleep, stress, apnea, cardiac performance, right, and many other clinical information as well with very high medical grade precision, right? So one of the major breakthroughs for us was also proving this and validating it clinically. That is what took us good amount of time. We launched this last year, and then COVID came, so where we had a lot of more work. But in nutshell, that's what we do. We convert any bed into a step down ICU. We help hospitals provide better healthcare outcomes, improve nursing efficiency, and not just in hospital wards. We can even enable that even at home as well. So give us any bed with Dozy, we can convert that into a continuous health monitoring event. So that's what we do.
Thanks, Modit. Thanks, Himesh, for the wonderful introduction. Just about me, I am one of the co-founders with ZozoDay. XOXODay is a 8-year-old company, in fact 9-year-old company now in reward recognition and incentive space, because and we have been there in India and across. So it's less about me. I think today we'll know more about how what are the challenges that Modit and Himesh has faced initially, right? So before we start, right, and Himesh and Modit, right? So Modit, while you talked about data driven decisions, right, you took a data driven decision saying to start your startup. So is there any other story that you know uh, triggered this kind of behavior between among one of you, or both of you, for example, to start into healthcare space specifically?
Sure. Actually, for me, yes. Answer is yes. It was not just one thing and not a very rational decision, especially when you want to start up, right? It's a
Right.
more emotional, hormonal decision, I would say, right? So you require a lot of more forces to actually align when you want to take the leap, and that too in medtech, which happens to be one of the most challenging fields, right, to start because it is very regulated and things like that. Requires a lot more gestation period, lot more capital, right? So to start in this, you require even more motivation, I would say. And one of the reasons for that was my uncle had kidney failure at that time, right? And my entire family was very much disturbed. And at that time, I've closely monitored how healthcare system is working right now, and we gave him the best possible healthcare, which was possible not just in India but even worldwide. But even then, we saw there were so many gaps, right? So that's what triggered that there are gaps which exist, and we can really bridge them. I'm
Yeah,
sure something similar will be there for Himesh as well.
yeah, exactly. So Himesh, what about you? Do you have a similar story,
So
or it's just a data driven decision?
uh, I think it's more of the latter, to be honest. So no personal, like I don't, there wasn't a personal story as such that influenced it, but I think Mudit alluded to it at the beginning. I think what was very interesting about the space was that you look at any sector and see the impact that internet and technology in general have had over the last decade or so, and it has fundamentally changed the way we do anything, like the way we shop, the way we interact with each other, the way we even like experience events now. But healthcare has remained largely the same, and I think that was a very intriguing thing when we started looking at healthcare, because I think anytime someone looks to start up, healthcare is a segment that is staring at everyone's face because it's such a large opportunity, right? But then you also wonder why nothing has changed, and that's when you go in and realize that it is a different sector, and and there are things that are quite peculiar here, and it's also therefore not the easiest to crack, but it's still a very interesting space, and I think ultimately if you do something well, then it's a huge opportunity. So for us it was more of the latter, where we felt that uh, huge opportunity, and then obviously there was an opportunity to do something impactful. uh, so
Great, great.
yeah.
So as an early stage startup, right, and we know that there are ample, challenges and opportunities as well, right? So, what were your early challenges? For example, was it finding a co-founder? Was it, finding a, fund? I mean, just to start your investment, right? Or was it finding an idea itself, right? What was it? So, Mudit, if you or Himesh, if you could take,
No,
start.
maybe Mudit can go ahead. I think Mudit is in a far more difficult space, so
Right, so we'll come to that definitely, but I think you both of you are equally disrupting the space, so there's no comparison. It's two different spaces altogether, but yeah, we will talk more about that. Yeah.
So I would say major challenges for me was, I would say, uh, one, the technology itself, right? So what we had created at that time, when I would narrate, when especially when I didn't have anything physical with me, right, and I would tell my idea to anyone, right? It was almost like a magic that how you can replace all these wire-based things and everything with something which is placed under the mattress, invisible. It is sometimes it is too good to be true. Until you don't see it, you really don't believe it, right? So that was primarily we were challenging the entire stereotype, right? So agar ek doctor ko will go and approach, right, so whatever they have studied so far, this clearly defies all of that, right? So it is not saying that aapko ECG se nahi data lena hai abhi, you can take it without even attaching an electrode as well, right? So it is just sometimes too disruptive also becomes a problem.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that was our major challenge. Because see, you need some early believers, right from person who is even going to do your first clinical trial also, right? You have to do the pitch to them that why this is going to work.
And who was
uh,
your first believer, first customer?
I would say Nimhans, right, where we started doing our clinical trials in
Okay.
Bangalore. So their head of department, Dr. Bindu Kutti, head of sleep medicine, right? She was the firm believer, right, that if we can really crack this up, it will really open up the entire space, right? Because so far the sleep medicine itself, right, it will require about 32 electrode attached to the person's body, right? And then you sleep. Of course, you can't sleep attached to that, right? So it changes the thing itself, which you want to measure. So it's almost like Heisenberg's uncertainty principle over there. So therefore, she was very much, help for it, although it sounded crazy. But I would say she was the first believer in that journey.
What about you, Himesh?
So Abhishek, again, I sort of had already run a company earlier. So for me, like finding co-founders and like getting the initial bits in place was less of a challenge. And although I think when you start off at the very beginning, it's one of the big things. Like you finding the right set of people to start off is often the
Exactly.
most difficult and the most
Yeah.
challenging thing. But I think what I realized specific to healthcare was just that you know you, you need you need to have a lot of conviction in what you are doing, and you need to believe in it very strongly, because there aren't a lot of people outside who share that belief, at least today. So unlike say fintech, which is the talk of the town, or edtech, you go out and you'll find 10 people, like, or hundreds of people, including investors, including customers, including like both sides. Customers are going to use the product, and maybe like people who are going to be providing the service. Like there are enough people who believe in the power of internet and the power of technology. But in healthcare, it's always a challenge. So I
Right.
remember, like, when we went to our first set of hospitals and said, look, we will come in and we want you to do these things, but in exchange we will give you a 30%, 40% extra demand. But here is what we want you to offer to the patients. And people used to laugh at our face. It is impossible. We have had 15 other companies like you come and promise the same thing, and I'm sure you'll not be able to do it. So I think you just need to have a lot of conviction in that idea, because you will get knocked down again and again and again. And uh, you need to have that inner belief, at least in the first few months, or the first year or so, when there's a lot of unknown, honestly, that you as a founder are also trying to navigate across.
Yeah, so I think it's worthwhile to for you to mention a bit about your business model, so that the audience can understand your business model. Because Modi's one is straightforward, and he's working on a remote patient monitoring module, where he's plugging a device, a touchless device, maybe you can say that, below the mattress. But yours is, what I understand is a OYO kind of model, right, where you are branding the clinics and hospitals with your own brand, right? Right.
Correct.
So if you could just take a couple of minutes to explain your model to the audience, and then we can question or stuff on that.
Sure. So as you said, I think saying OYO for hospital is a good starting point. I think
Okay.
it sort of sums up what we do in a fairly well fashion. Where what we are essentially trying to do is, what we figured was that there aren't a lot of hospital brands in the country today. And when you think about most patients, just finding a good doctor or a good hospital is often the largest part of the problem that they face in getting any treatment.
Mhm.
Because everybody knows Fortis is great. Everybody knows there is this ex doctor in each city who is the best cardiologist in the city, or the best orthopedic surgeon in the city.
Right.
Unfortunately, there's only the top 1-2% who can afford to go to these hospitals or go to these doctors. The rest of the people don't really know where to go. The government hospitals are usually full. There's a lot of waiting. The experience is broken. Uh, and there's just so many other private hospitals in general, that for an average patient, it's very difficult to figure out which is good and which is not so good.
Right.
So that was the starting point, where we said, can we build a hospital brand that is not necessarily as expensive as some of these chains, but still stands for clinical quality, good experience, uh, transparency in pricing, affordability to a certain extent. And what we figured was that there were actually a lot of very high quality private hospitals, something in the 50, 100, 150 bed range, which were not doing very well. And the reason they were not doing very well was not because they were not good clinically, but because uh, they were not savvy enough to create a good brand for themselves. So they were You go to a Koormangal or an HSR in Bangalore, there are about 10 of these multi-specialty hospitals. The reality is that 2 out of those are fundamentally better than the rest, but there's just no way they are able to communicate that to the patient. And all of those hospitals run at a 30-40% utilization, which is very poor for a fixed cost business that a hospital is. So that's where we saw the opportunity that we could go and partner with the top tier in terms of quality. We let them take care of the clinical part of operations. We do an audit from our side to ensure that they continue to hold on to that promise. But we co-brand the hospital, and we institute certain policies on pricing, certain policies on patient experience that in overall enhance the quality of the brand and ensure that we are able to provide that option to the patients that we wanted to.
Yeah, so like you said, and challenges you must have faced ample, because when you said that you went to the people explaining your ideas, right, they were really laughing on the face, right? So for your kind of business, right, how do you manage to get your first customer? Because you didn't have any data, you didn't have any business back in then, right? So what was the challenge, or how did you convince your first customer to onboard with you?
I think it was just हम थोड़े बेशरम थे, मतलब it was a lack of a better word. We just kept going to hospital and we said, you know what, like just try us out.
So
And
Besharam is the word, and others should follow, right? I mean, that's what it takes, just to break through, right? I mean, I think without that, it's
yeah,
not
I think
possible.
you have to sort of, yeah, I mean, to sort of say it well, I think you have to get rid of inhibitions. Like,
Yeah,
we had run a startup earlier. I had worked at a consulting firm. So, you go to a hospital and the guy makes you wait for 3 hours outside the hospital, and you have to say, okay, it's part of what it takes to do this. And you do that with 10 hospitals. One guy will see some value in what you're offering. You start off there, you do a good job. You demonstrate to that person that you can get the demand. There are 5 others who'll follow. And we saw that very quickly in our first city, where the first 2, 3 hospitals are very difficult to get. But the moment we got those, and the moment we demonstrated some demand, there was already a word in the ecosystem that, okay, there's this new concept and these guys are actually able to get patients. And suddenly there were hospitals and clinics writing to us to partner. And we've been around for a year now. We are at a stage now where we are having to say no to 95% of the people who come to us, because we either don't need them or they just don't fit the bill in terms of the quality that we want to onboard.
amazing. The quality is something that you definitely audit and keep in control, right? And that's very important what I feel for any kind of startup, right? So just next question is around do you I mean, for both of you, do you have any founder or co-founder as a medical co-founder representing the medical fraternity, as in doctor or things like those, or you just think that tech enough, or your experience on top of it enough is good enough? So maybe Mudit can answer first. Yeah.
So basically, in our case, no, as in both of us actually come from a tech background, right? And we have kind of filled in the gaps which were there. And there are lots of gaps, right? With team members, core team members, and, even the board of advisors as well. So what we did was, as I, had told the story that, go and pitch to doctors. Their opinion is very much important, as in it has to be there and incorporated, because they are the final and primary users. But at the same time, right, even if you get part-time attention of theirs, that's more than enough. And it is very hard for anyone to convince a very good doctor to leave their practice and join you full time, right? So, or if the case is other way around, then in most cases they are not practiced enough, right? So it's still, you're not gaining on their experience, right? So we really benefited with a very strong board of advisors, and even till now as well, we continue to gather more and more of them, especially when we have to go deeper into any specialty. Like now we are going more into cardiac, into geriatrics. So keep on getting specialists in that area and engage with them.
What about you, Himish?
I
Do you have
think
any?
the same as Mudit. I think so. I think a co-founder with a medical background is important if you're getting into something that's really into clinical side of things. But I think otherwise, like, I would sort of agree with Mudit, where what we believe is that we would rather have some attention from some of the best minds versus having the full attention of people who are not necessarily that great. Because Like I can't convince the best neurosurgeon in the city to come and join us full time, right? But I can definitely convince, and in fact, we have convinced a few of them to be angel investors in the company. There's a few who are like, as Udit mentioned, we also have an advisory board of sorts. So there are these doctors who have varied experiences, who have been advising us in various capacities. And I think that's the other thing we've realized, that there is no single type of a person who's going to help you. You often need support from multiple people. Like sometimes we have to go and talk to a doctor to understand something about a way a procedure is done. Sometimes you have to go and talk to a hospital administrator to understand how something like pricing works. Sometimes it can be someone completely different, say on the insurance side of things. So it's always good to have build a network of mentors or advisors who can sort of provide that experience to you, and even if you get some time out of them, that's usually good enough.
Amazing. So, and what about compliances for both of you? Like, how did you come across the compliances? So were they really challenges across the compliances that you face, that you had to come against on the hurdle? Because what I understand from Modit is in manufacturing of that devices, right? So of course he would need a lot of approvals like FDA or things like those to get recognized. For you it is more like a marketing of business, but you still need to work with patient data because you are collecting their appointments and then giving the leads to the hospitals, right? That's what I believe is the right. How, and for both of you the compliances would be different, right? For the common would be HIPAA compliance and things like those, but then if you go deeper into this for medical devices, the compliance will be different. For your marketing, medical marketing side of it, the compliance will be different. How did you deal with those?
So,
Mudit, I
can
will
I
let you
go
go first.
first?
Yeah, Mudit, please go ahead.
Okay, I'll go first.
Yeah.
So again, over there, right? So it is more of a discovery phase, right? And even now as well, we keep on finding new, because it is not all, we are not restricted to just India also as a geography, right? So now
Yeah.
in the near future, we are also planning to launch it in US, Europe, Southeast Asia, right? So compliance is like a never
Mm-hmm.
ending thing. So therefore, what we have done is we have a full-time role also in our company who looks at compliance, and also we have consultants who are experts in particular domains, right? And there also, as you mentioned, there are different types of it required. One is more from data security point of view, one more from device safety point of view, patient safety point of view, and then clinical outcomes point of view, right? So these are all different and different types of compliances which are required, and mostly the classifications are same, right? And if you go even beyond geographies as well, what is done in India is not very different from actually Europe, right? It's not very different from US. The format is different. So what you need to do is basically do those tests once, and then it is just a rearrangement, and keep on doing applications at multiple places, right? And not actually so HIPAA and GDPR, right? They are close to 90% same.
Yeah.
Similar to ISO 27001, it is again 90% of it, right? So in a way, you can actually get all of them if you have good consultants whom you are getting advice from. So again, get expertise, and it already exists. People have really cracked what it takes to launch a product in the market and things like that. And yeah, just get it and you can then launch it. So it's not again that much of a rocket science, as well as hard as in it has been created. And even while you are making the system, you can actually make systems which are very much compliant to it, right? So it is also not very difficult when you are doing it right from the word go, right? So then all these compliances are not that difficult as well.
But
Image,
you would also have needed the approval from the authorities, right, on your devices, medical devices, right?
correct.
How difficult it was or how easy it was to get
It
that?
is, so it depends on application to application. So something which is intravenal, right? That will of course be very difficult, right? Something that goes inside the body, it's very difficult, because how do you maintain the patient safety and things like that, right? Ours being a contactless device, right? Half of the things we don't even we are NA in most of the cases, that between the patient there is no chances of infection and this that everything. So most of the classes are anyways NA for us. So for us, it was difficult, but I won't say not that difficult, like a vaccine or drug, right? For that matter. So our
Yeah.
trials and
So,
everything, and even clinical trials as well, right? So when we are convincing a partner institute to run our trials, they literally don't have to do anything. उनके patient आज भी सो रहे हैं, कल भी सो रहे हैं, बस उसके नीचे devices are there, and we just need the benchmarking data. All that we have to follow is basically some protocols with IERB. So that is the protocol which we put in with the hospital board, that we won't be collecting any sorts of personally identifiable data of patient and things like that. And that's it. So if you are following the steps, right, so then it is not that difficult as well. And now it has become a routine work. So yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Himesh? Any compliance that came as a hurdle to you?
Not so much, Abhishek. So I think as Mudit mentioned, you have to get the right set of people to help you out. So in our case, we were cognizant of this being a bit of a sensitive space, and we invested in a good lawyer the day we started off. And I think for us, the bigger issues were more in terms of data privacy. And so there's an existing law in India. There's a new one coming up
Correct.
very soon. So we also wanted to be compliant with that, because that's the one that's actually more meaty.
Right.
So I think just my advice on those things is just invest in a good lawyer. And as Mudit said, some of these things are fairly productized now, so people know what
So
to.
you talked about data privacy law. So and Indian government is more and more focusing on having the data centric to India, not throwing the not allowing the servers to be kept out of Indian regions, right? I mean, from their compliance point of view, right?
Right.
So how did you cope up with that? I mean, did you put your servers all in India, or uh,
So yeah, we don't have our own servers. We still use AWS, but now AWS offers you an option to select servers only in India.
mhm.
So again, I think the market has evolved fairly quickly to some of these regulations. So I think not just AWS, some of the other vendors also now offer you the option of
And
selecting where
Himesh,
your data is
specifically for you, these hospitals and clinics that you partner with, do they not pose a challenge to you to store their patient data with you? I mean, is that not a challenge to you?
Not really. So Abhishek, I think the way this industry is set up is, if you get the patient,
Mhm.
you are the
So they
god.
don't care about the data. I mean,
Unfortunately, that is the answer. So we actually, I think we put a lot more value to the data than we see hospitals doing. Hospitals, to be honest, a lot of hospitals don't really know what the regulations are. So I
right.
think we have sort of had to set the bar for ourselves in at least some of the data privacy
Yeah,
laws.
but
And
I mean, the government has been very, very cognitive of this situation, and for example, I'll give in a COVID situation, I mean, quickly formed a telemedicine society, right? TSI with telemedicine, and they launched telemedicine guidelines, right? So I'm sure for Mudit right now, it's not there on the IoT kind of devices, but I'm sure it's gonna come.
No, it's already there actually. So
It's
devices.
very bare bone, I would say, because it's not well devised, because there are very few people who are doing this RMP. And my next question to that, to you would be on that those lines also. How do you feel the market today in India is for your kind of device?
Market is huge. So we have 2 million hospital beds, right? Only about 100,000 being monitored today. So I have about 1.9 million beds, which are completely unmonitored right now, being manned by nurse going to the patient and collecting data and things like that, which is very inefficient.
Mm-hmm.
So and that's expected to double in next 5 to 7 years. So again, a big financial booster coming from government in all primary, secondary, and tertiary sectors, right? So government beds are all set to double, and private industry is not going to sit back either, right? So we are expecting a huge bump over there, and in such scenario, right, what is not possible is that nurses are not going to double overnight, right? That can't
Right.
happen. So it is only if technologies like ours can come into picture, which can make nurses almost 2x more efficient. That is the only way to manage this. And pandemic situation has already taught us, right, that our preparedness is nowhere even near, right?
I
And
agree. I agree totally.
yeah.
So you plan to keep yourself always B2B, or you also plan to keep bring it to the normal customers, like they can buy it directly from Dozy website, or maybe affiliates like
they
Amazon.
they can, but our focus is more B2B in nature.
Mhm.
But our B2C product is also as evolved, as people buy it today from Amazon, from our website,
Mhm.
for self monitoring.
Right.
especially for their parents, and if they have especially some disorders or something like that, and they want to ensure they are doing well on a day-to-day basis, and they get an alert. So all the NRI population and things like that, they are already doing that. Even people living remotely. So kids are in Bangalore, parents are in Nagpur. I'm talking about my own scenario over here, but they do use such solutions. We have seen that.
So Himesh, what's your primary market? Is it tier one city, or you're also going to get into tier two, tier three cities?
So Abhishek, I think the focus is, I would say, around the top 30 cities of India. And
Mhm.
the reason I say top 30 today is because for our model to work, we need to have private hospitals that are struggling to get demand.
Right.
So I think the way our market is also set up is we have overcapacity in the urban markets and we
Mhm.
have undercapacity in the rural market. So, people talk a lot about this beds per thousand population as a metric to judge where we are in terms of being a healthcare market. You would be surprised that places like Bangalore, Hyderabad actually have more beds per thousand population than the US.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
right?
I'm
So
not surprised
that just
because
tells you how skewed the ratio is. And that's because just because you look at any doctor, ultimately everyone wants to set up their own clinic or a hospital. And I'm yet to meet a doctor who has said, I will go and set it up in a tier three location. Everybody wants to live in a nice city and like
yeah,
enjoy.
it's so skewed. I was going through the numbers, and we figured out there's for every 1,200 patients, there's just one doctor. If you just put numbers as such, right? And if you
Yep.
go into quality, it's even worse, right? I mean, forget about the qualitative analysis, right? I'm just talking about the numbers that you put, on the board, right? So, Imesh, how do normal people in this scenario, like a person like me or any other person, right, would benefit from your solution, right, in current scenario?
So see, I think the main benefit is, as I said, like people don't know where to go, and there is like beyond the established brands, it's usually a very arduous task to find a hospital or a doctor you can trust. And when I say trust, it's across multiple factors, right? It's the most important thing is, would I get better? In India, you will have hardly any hospital publishing their clinical outcomes. Like only Fortis and Apollo do it, and they also do it voluntarily for specialties that they are good at. So Apollo will do it for cardiology. I don't think they do it for oncology. At least I have not seen that. Whereas HCG would probably do it for oncology because that's their core. So uh, as a patient, you actually have no way of figuring out what is good and what is wrong, not so good. When you go to an Apollo, okay, you have that base level of trust. But if you can't go there, then that becomes a huge challenge. And beyond just medical quality as well, just the quality of the experience, pricing. A lot of people, unfortunately, in India just don't get the right healthcare because it's not affordable to them.
Mm-hmm.
So those things are fairly important. And at least what we believe is that if we can create an option that works for them in terms of pricing, that works for them in terms of being able to afford and being able to walk into that hospital, and then if the outcomes are good, if people can trust that place, then it actually solves a very important problem for a lot of people. And
Great. So for the audience out there, if you have any questions for two guests from here, please do write in the chat box, and I would ask both Mudita and Himesh on your behalf. So please go ahead and start typing your questions, and I would start asking. But in the meantime, Himesh and Mudit, right? What was important for you when you started? Maybe 2 3 months down the line, was the solution of POC validation more important, or getting a fund more important? So maybe Mudit, for you, because you are more, hardware intensive. So
I'll take it. So for us, definitely POC was important, and then the funds that both me and Gaurav had redirected were our higher studies funds. So we did have funds. So we were both going for higher studies, and we thought ki we won't, and we would learn on the go in the field. So we did have some starter funds over there. So इतना कुछ मारा मारी नहीं थी वहाँ.
uh,
So POC was definitely the first thing. Because as I mentioned, that was our biggest challenge. Just idea where no one was going to believe us. We needed something to show that this works, and that was most critical part.
yeah, so I think that's the most important lesson for our audience, for and for all of us, that if you just talk about ideas, there are enough in the market, right? Everyone talks about ideas. The execution that matters, and one who does that with conviction leads the path, right? What about you, Himesh? Like, was fund very important? Because Yours is more kind of you have, since you're promising, let's say 30 to 40% increment into the beds of this of the partnering clinics and hospitals, marketing spends and all those things. How did you manage? Did you put your own money, or you went straight ahead for the funds?
So we did raise funds when we started off, and I think we were both privileged and lucky to have that option on the table.
Mhm.
So I think, to like on your question, see, the most important thing is obviously to find product market fit. But
Yeah.
at least what I think is, like, very realistically, it's also very important to build a case for raising money, because a lot of really good ideas cannot grow without money. And like I have seen people sometimes taking a very idealistic view, saying, I will just focus on the product and I'll get this absolutely right, and only then I will go and raise money. And sometimes the product never sees light of the day, right? So I think it's a balancing act that early stage founders have to play, and especially if you don't have the money to put in yourself, or if you can't take that sort of a risk uh, yourself. So that's at least my view. But I think in general, the it's important that you also get comfort on the product market fit. Ultimately, if what you are making or designing or whatever you're building has to work for the customer, it has to work for all the stakeholders involved, and ultimately it also has to be a good business. Like there's a lot of examples where people made awesome products that worked for everyone, but they just didn't make money, which unfortunately also is not the right way to go.
Right. So
Yeah, I agree with him too. Yeah. So basically, one thing that I'll just like to add over there. So perfect product to hota hi nahi hai. I won't
correct.
say even we have a perfect product even now as well, right? There's nothing like that. So there is no point getting obsessed just on that. The only one way you validate a product is go in the market and check it, right? So that is the most important thing. So get something which you can take in the market. And while you are doing that, if the market feedback is good, right? Uh, Chances are investors also are in the market itself, right? So you will most probably get your first set of investor right from the market itself, when you where you are going and pitching product for usage, right? They will come and most probably they'll fund you. So
Yeah.
Himesh, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I think absolutely. And in fact, like, I know it's a bit of a, like, the talk is more about challenges of healthcare, but I think one big advantage of this space is that it's ultimately a bit of a slow industry, and for the right reasons. You can't break things and then learn from it, right? Like, that is not an option here,
Exactly.
which at least I have realized it also works to the advantage, because this is not going to be, a space where, say, someone like an Oyo raises a lot of money and just blows everyone out of the water. That's not going to happen, because uh, like, health tech is always going to move a little slowly, because people will always be cautious to adopt for the right reasons. So, you it I think it's more important, therefore, to go out and tinker continuously, and like, obsess over building the right thing, but also sort of be comfortable in taking things out, and getting feedback, and fixing those. You don't have to worry about someone else coming up with something that's far more funded, and blowing you out.
Uh, got it. So there's a question for you, Himesh, right? So the question is from Tahira Gaswala. So what about the medical records? Do your hospitals use same type of software? That means, are you providing some software, or they're using their own softwares? I mean, how do you plug into
Um,
that?
So today they use their own software. I think over the long term, what we want to do is we want to build. So basically, what hospital uses is something called an HIS,
Yeah.
where all of these medical records and things sit. Today, our systems sit on top of the existing HIS, and they will take out whatever information we want, and feed in whatever information we want. Uh, Over the long term, we might think of making our own HIS, but today it sort of seems like a very, like, HIS in its current shape and form is more of a data repository, and a billing system, and some of those things. So we are very comfortable in working with existing tools.
Yeah, so I'm Mudit. I'm assuming that yours would be straightforward, because you would straight away plug in with a lot of systems and provide the data, or is it like you want them to plug into your system?
No, so as so some of the this doesn't come into picture in the smaller hospital, as in
Yeah.
150 hospitals. But when we are talking about large chains, right? So then we even integrate it to their systems as well. So in that way, basically they don't use our front end. they integrate our system into whatever HIS and MIS systems that they are using, right? So the data goes in and integrates it to their systems.
Okay, great. So that's the API model that you're following, right?
Correct, correct.
And just curious to ask, like, I like Himesh also said that some of the hospitals work in specific domains, right? And you also picking a speciality one by one, right? So there was a question offline on the forms, like what are the job opportunities in computational cancer genomics health domain? Do you have, will you have any idea on that, or do you want
It's
to put some
it's a
idea?
big googly. In fact, I have heard that term first time together.
Hmm?
I do know that term separately, right? So genomics has a huge opportunity. I know that.
Right.
Cancer management as well has a huge opportunity, right? So I'm pretty sure, together as well there will be, but I don't have a clear answer, or I don't know of anyone who is working specifically on that. But genomics in itself is, actually seeing a big upturn right now,
Mhm.
right? And even in India as well, there are few companies which are doing wonders over there, right? So yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And Himesh, uh, do you also plan to bring mental fitness along with your system? For example, there are enough gap, especially in India, right? I mean, nobody focus on psychiatric kind of issues so deliberately, because this always hidden. Matlab, psychiatry in India is a taboo, right? If you talk about mental health, लोग कहेंगे पागल है ये, मतलब, and many of, I mean, it often happens that patients don't go because of that taboo to the I mean doctors, because उनको brand कर दिया जाता है, label कर दिया जाता है. So do you plan to get into that and solve that challenge area also? Do you see any gap opportunity in that area?
So Abhishek, that's a huge opportunity. Uh, I think it's a space which is seeing acceptance now. Like people at least are beginning to accept that they need to go visit someone and get help if there is something wrong. And we are actually adding a few options on those sites. I think we are also realizing that it's a fairly complicated space. So it's not just one discipline that you start off. There's actually a lot of sub-discipline and a lot of nuance to it. But like ultimately what we intend to build is a multi-specialty platform, and this will very much be an important part of what we offer.
Great. So there's a question for Mudit from Ajinkya Sisodi. And I think the answer can be straightforward, but I think they would want to hear from you. The question is, there are many alternatives to your product, example, smartwatches, which provide sleep analysis and lot many things. How do you justify your product in front of these alternatives?
Sure, sure. So I think this is the question which is asked generally.
Most frequent asked question for you,
I
I
would say,
guess.
yeah. So this is like half volley for me.
Right.
Still. So smartwatches actually are not really an alternative for us. They probably do one or two features what we provide. Sleep is actually not the feature which is widely used by hospital, by the way. I would like them to, but they don't really care about sleep. Trust me. Right. So all the body vitals which are there, heart rate, respiration, blood pressure, oxygen saturation, cardiac contractility, sleep apnea. Now, sleep apnea is very different from sleep itself. It is how many times in your sleep you stop to breathe. Right. So these are episodes which are very common, and especially in diabetic and cardiac patients, this can be fatal as well. Right. So that is something which is clinical in nature, and whatever is clinical, right, not just it is not something like just for the wellness sake you are getting those values over there, but it is also fed into the triaging system. So if anything goes up and down, there is also an alert which is triggered, and that is what is the biggest value prop that actually we bring to the table. Another one is actually the non-wearability itself, right? So even if I would say that, at some shape and form that smartwatches are as accurate as us, right, still you have to basically wear them, charge them, and that becomes a huge problem in itself, right? Especially when nurses, doctors are managing, and these are, by the way, mind you, not people like you and me who are going for jog. These are people who are managing certain kind of disorder, disease. They don't want to be hooked up to anything, right? Even the smartwatch as well, right? So that's why our solution right now works very well, because we have made it even so simple that you don't even have to wear a smartwatch. You just have to lie down on your bed, and that is all that you have to do to make sure that you are being monitored continuously. That's it. So yeah.
Yeah, and yours is, I mean, the very simple answer is touchless solution, right? The
Correct.
smartwatch is still you need to wear, but you are just keeping it under your mattress and then you're wearing, right? So there was a very interesting question of you.
Abhishek, just to add as a potential customer, in fact, we are talking to Rosie at this point. But I
Uh,
think the one other important thing is, I think people often don't understand how conservative doctors are, and they have to be
right,
as a profession.
right.
So, like and we have tried this, like if we tell our doctors to trust the data that's coming out of a smartwatch to monitor the vitals of, say, a cardiac patient that's gotten discharged, they are not okay with that because don't feel comfortable giving a medical opinion based on data from a device that's not clinically proven. So I think the one thing that works in favor of what Mudit is building is the fact that there's a clinical certification, and the fact that it's a device that doctors can trust, and to like that actually that's a huge advantage for, say, someone like a hospital who's trying to adopt something like this.
Correct. Thanks, Himesh.
Well, we
Right,
try
good,
to
good. I mean, I think we always, I mean, together we can always capture a lot many use cases, right? And I think we'll briefly touch on those things. What are the things that you're both of you are planning together? तो जनता को थोड़ा सा बताएंगे. But before that, there was a very interesting question that I was about to ask. Will a solution like Uber for doctors work in India, right? Which is like doctors on the go, right? What do you think? I mean, Himesh.
So I think this was one of the questions that came up in the pre-read as well. So see, for a primary consultation, I think it could work. And I think there are already platforms that enable that. But the moment you get into secondary and tertiary, I'm not so sure, because the care element there is not just the doctor; it's also the establishment, right? The hospital that you set up, and the hospital also then there's an element of the technology or the infrastructure that you put in the hospital. There's an element of basic processes like infection control, quality of nursing staff. So I think for primary it can work. I don't know, or maybe like if whoever asked can explain this question a little bit better. I like on secondary and tertiary, I sort of don't see that happening. There's actually an interesting company in China that's trying to do this, but what they are building is in some ways a weaver for doctors. So they set up hospitals, or like rather clinics, which also have fairly advanced scanning equipment. They have basic surgical equipment as well, and that place is sort of open to all doctors. So independent doctors can come and run their practice from that physical location. I don't know how successful they are, but it's a 10-cent company, so they have fairly.
Right, but I mean, just a curious question. Since we already know that the ratio to from patient to doctor is so skewed, do you think this model will work in India? Because I mean, I don't know if doctors would be willing to visit a patient home or things like those, unless it is a very separate location, as in village or tier 2 tier 3 cities, right? I don't know if it will work in future. So what's your opinion?
If doctors have to visit, it's not working. So I sort of thought it was more about discovering the right doctor and talking to
No,
them
no,
on
no.
the
It was like doctors on the go, right? Doctor visiting, or maybe, uh, doctors. So I also like, the question is more like, do you want to go to the doctor? Doctors will visit you, things like that. But what do you think, Mudit?
So I would love that model, but thing is that what is the most precious commodity, if I have to put it that way, right? Is actually the surgeon's doctor's time, right?
Yeah.
Over there. Now, is this the most optimal way? So if you have like only one is to, if you are saying 1:1,000 is doctor to patient ratio, doctor to specialist ratio is probably 1:10,000, right? And that's what
Yeah.
Himesh is
Definitely.
actually talking about, right? That probably at that level, at primary level, at GP level, that is possible. And even we are seeing that is happening, right? So all the telemedicine companies in certain way are actually, reaching out over call, right, to patient video calls and so on, right? So in a way that is working out for certain kind of specialities. But moment you want to make it like a very specialized thing, you want to discuss about cardiac care or a surgery per se, right? That doctor's time is so precious that you can't leave it on the go. How can you really make it efficient? probably the way of doing that, right? And I know these things are happening. So like cyber knife and things like that kind of techniques, right? So in that, basically the person doesn't have to go all the way to say Bangalore, but if the person is in a tertiary facility and the doctor can robotically and remotely manage the surgery. Now that is what I would call as a Uber model for surgeons, right? You can't transport a surgeon for sure, not even in a helicopter, I would
Right.
say. So yeah.
Great. So, and so when you started, right, and more from for you, Image, right? How did you manage to make yourself as a brand with the customer? Because your USP is increasing number of beds in the hospital, so you still have to reach out to the patients out there and convince them, okay, that okay, this is a good hospital at this rate and things like that. How did you? I mean, what were some of the tactics that you used to create yourself as a brand?
So Abhishek, I think there is no like it's not something that will happen overnight. It will take some time, and like
Right.
we've been around for a year and a half now, and I would say the process is still very much underway. And honestly, the way to do that is you figure out what the core brand promises are. In our case, it's good clinical quality, it's great experience, and it's transparent pricing, and we ensure that we give that package to every single patient who walks in. So like an example of when I say affordable and transparent pricing is we give a fixed price package for all surgical procedures, where essentially once the patient has met a doctor and the diagnosis is done, the patient is given a package which is an all-inclusive package, and the price does not change irrespective of the number of days of stay in the hospital, irrespective of whether there's an extra dietitian consultation involved and so on. And that actually builds a lot of trust in the patient's mind, because a lot of people, like as I said, unfortunately are not able to get their procedure done just for sheer lack of cash. So if you tell them that, look, this is what this will cost and not an extra rupee, then it actually gives them a lot of peace of mind. So I think at a high level, to what
So
you
I
asked.
agree. I mean, I agree. The quality definitely matters, like the one you're talking about. But what my question was more from to get your first patient, right? What was your GTM strategy? For the where did you depend upon the patients, incoming patients of the hospital self, and then decided on the word of mouth, marketing, or did you, go straight ahead into the market and say that, hey, look, we are bringing to you this kind of quality service. Why don't you subscribe for this?
So we went straight out, and we do digital marketing today.
Mhm.
That's the primary channel through which we get patients. And I think what we are latching on to is that there is now a growing tendency of people to go online to discover a second opinion. Like anybody who's recommended a surgery,
Mhm.
the first reaction is, I don't want to get the surgery done. I want to find a doctor who will tell me that this can be cured with just medicine. So people want to go and talk to more doctors and ensure that a surgery is really needed. And for that, a lot of patients are now actually coming online. So in terms of GTM, that's the core base that we try and target to begin with. And the promise to them is that, look, why don't you come to our hospital? Why don't you meet our doctors and decide for yourself what looks more suitable to you. And today we convert. So if whatever number of patients ultimately get recommended a surgery by our doctors, we convert about 60 to 70% of them into getting their procedure done at our hospital, which is just purely because of the overall package that we are able to offer, where people feel more comfortable versus the other hospitals that they might have visited.
And Mudit, it would be different for you, right? Because you are mostly into B2B side. You would definitely depend on testimonials from your existing customers and things like those. So, did you deploy any kind of exclusive strategy into this, into GTM, for your kind of target base?
No, we don't do any exclusives. But what we did was, running a lot of demos, per se, CMEs and things like that, right?
Mhm.
Because what was important in our case was that people don't know about something like this exist. Remote patient monitoring or patient monitoring, this is not an alien concept to any of the hospitals. They want to do it, but they don't have the means, right? So first time,
Right.
basically telling them that you have something like this is the most critical thing. So right from going to hospitals and approaching the medical director, head of nurse, and things like that, and just demoing. That was the way we started, and even now as well, right? That is a mostly how we do it. Although now we are shifting more and more towards digital and doing more of inbound rather than our team going and converting a hospital.
Right. So, I mean, for the audience, what's your message? Like when somebody is starting early into this health tech space, right? What's your suggestion for that guy? Like, how should they approach this problem area?
Himesh, please.
Yeah, I think spend as much time as you can on finding the right business. I think don't jump in too early, because I think what happens is, so like today is a very very good time to start up. There is a lot of capital in the market. There are a lot of people willing to give you money, and in general the adoption of internet technology in general is quite high. So you might, like, people have a tendency to say, okay, I'm going to think about something, I'll go raise money and I'll figure out. But once you raise money, you've gotten on a treadmill, and that treadmill only keeps getting faster. So I think my only message is spend as much time as you can in figuring out what is it that you want to do, and build a lot of conviction on that idea before going in too deep. And it's not just about raising money, it's also, say, hiring people. Once you hire even 10 people, there's a moral responsibility on you. You don't want to done something for 2 months and then tell people, sorry, it's not working out, and I can't employ you anymore. So I think that's the only thing I will say. Like, spend as much time as you want, do like good amount of research. If possible, maybe also conduct pilots if your product allows that, and only then sort of go all in. And by the way, that does not mean that you do your job and do this as a side gig. You have to devote yourself full time to it.
Correct.
Agreed, agreed. Mudit, do you have any pointers up to that?
Just extending on what Himesh said, so 100% Satyavachan, I would say, and over that, I would say it's a long haul, right? So in this, it's a slow moving industry, so one immense amount of patience is required. So if you are signing up for healthcare, you have to be patient. First thing first, you have to be yourself patient first. So that is a most critical thing, right? बहुत जल्दी result ओ one night wonder ऐसे type का कुछ नहीं होने वाला. You have to really prepare for this, and that's how you should also plan your capital also, right? You should not just diffuse everything, say digital में उड़ा दिया, and now you have nothing left, right? So you should measure, improve, iterate very very quickly in this, and be very efficient, especially in the initial stages till you don't get the product market fit.
Yeah, but especially एक चीज देखा है मैंने, तो whenever somebody wants to start into health tech, right, and if you just try to validate the idea, right, you'll find a number of people already trying to do that, or already trying to do it, right? And most of the people out there, right, and I know a lot of people have been talking to me on that front, it discourages most of people to go out in the market and try it out, right? Because उनको लगता है यार इतना competition है, already so many companies are doing this stuff, how do I bring out a differentiation and how do I do this? So how do so what's the message for such kind of people, right? Should they then give up, or should they find out a niche into that? What should they do? And this is a very common question, I'm sure you guys must have also encountered during your career, right?
So I'll go. Basically, I don't think there is a lot of competition out there in the market. Himesh ने ये
Exactly.
पहले बोला था, but actually there is not. People who are actually delivering quality stuff are very rare. So if you can actually do something like that, your solution is distinguished, has its own niche. Healthcare, that too in India, right, has such a immense market. आप
Right.
इसको कितना भी slice and dice कर दो, still you will have $1 billion market, right? And मतलब और ज़्यादा slice and dice करो until you don't have that 100 or $10 million market which is sitting right in front of you, right? That much slicing and dicing is required. It is not about कि मतलब $5 billion का market, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever, right? Which is that 100 million market that you are going after tomorrow is the most crucial thing in my opinion, right? तो और वो आपको ना जैसे मतलब one term which came and I am very happy about that, genomics in cancer management, right? Now this is a niche over
Right.
there, right? अब जिसको भी वो करना है ना, अगर वो करेगा, trust me, no one, not just in India, दुनिया में भी एक दो लोग होंगे जिनने ये ट्राई किया होगा. So there is not a lot of competition when you put yourself at such a distinctive advantage like that, right? So your thoughts, Himish?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I also agree that there is actually not so much competition. So I think, Abhishek, what I have actually seen is that people definitely discourage, and I think that's more because there's a graveyard of startups in healthcare that's very apparent, and a lot of people
Right.
have
Exactly.
attempted to build something and they have not been successful. And there are more examples of failure than there are success, at least in health tech versus say e-commerce or fintech or edtech. So it's very easy to get discouraged. It's very easy for people to tell you that what you are trying is not going to work. But I think what you have to see is, maybe try and find out what is it that failed or that led to the failure of those specific entities. And maybe I can talk about our experience. Like for example, building a branded hospital chain is an idea that's been around for a decade now. It's not a new thing. It's not something new that we discovered. There is nothing unique about it. There have been venture funded, private equity funded companies that have attempted to do this, and all of them have failed to scale beyond 10, 15. And at least what we discovered when we looked at all of them, we actually managed to speak with quite a few of them, was that they were all trying to run hospitals in some shape and form. And to us, that the big takeaway was that if you run a hospital, you're not going to scale, no matter how good you are. And some of these companies are actually run by very, very successful doctors and hospital administrators. So I think my message is that you have to go and find out uh, what is it that led to the failure of whatever someone else was doing. And actually, healthcare there's a good chance that somebody has attempted something earlier. And talk to people. Like people are surprisingly happy to talk about what led to their failure. I think that in that sense, it's a good community. So people will be more than happy to share their experience. They'll be more than happy to tell you uh, what works, what doesn't work, and then build your thesis on top of that. And maybe you'll realize that that space is not worth it as well. So don't take me for uh,
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So last question of the session. Uh, where do you see yourself? Like, I mean, are you building a Amazon kind of company, or are you building a ecosystem in healthcare? Where do you see yourself? So Mudit, maybe you can take up, and then Himish.
I would say we are building Android in certain way, right? That we are trying to be the OS behind every hospital bed. The way data is being collected, consumed, actioned upon, right? So that is something that we are trying to build.
yeah.
What about you, Himish?
See, I think Amazon also started off as world's biggest bookstore, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
I think, as Mudit mentioned, you have to find a niche that works for you. Start off with that, and my at least my belief in this space is if you crack the core, there is like a lot of stuff that starts becoming very apparent very soon, right? So at least for us today, the focus is can we be the best branded chain in the country, even
right,
at 1,000 beds.
right,
If we are able to do that, then automatically we can add on a lot of other things. And Apollo, for example, has done that. Like Apollo is not just a hospital chain today. They also sell insurance. They have
Correct.
pharmacy. They have their own clinics, and it is all there because Apollo Hospital is a brand that everyone loves. The moment that goes out, everything else goes out as well. So I think you have to find that niche that really works. Get that to get like kick ass in that, and then it just expands after that. And this has happened across a lot of companies now. So I don't think we worry too much about being an Amazon or a platform. It's more about being really good at what we are.
right. So and there's an important message behind what you said, right? Find a niche, right, that you want to excel at, and then provide a quality over there, right? So, do
Yeah.
you, any final message for our audience out there? Should they start in healthcare? Should they not start in healthcare? Uh, any final message, Modit and Nimesh? Modit, maybe you can.
So I would definitely say start in healthcare, right? A strong recommendation for me, right? As I said, if you are driven, if you have patience to last in this industry, and trust me, this will take 5-10 years to give you the biggest amount of fruits for which you came out in the market. In fact, we onboarded even our investors also like that. That you are here for a long haul, and they are fine with that, right? So you just need to have a conversation. So you
Yeah,
should definitely do that because there's a large gap which is there. I was just looking at it, right? So almost I'm just talking about medtech, but healthcare is not medtech or devices. But since I belong to that, I will talk about that only. So about 90% of what we devices which we use in India today are imported, right? Now think about that. That is the gap which exists today. All sorts of surgical, diagnostic, every kind of tools, right? We get it from Japan. US, Germany, Switzerland, right? Why can't we do it in India over here itself, right? And that is a huge gap which is there. In fact, if someone wants to even know that, even to fund as well, there are many government schemes, especially in biotech as well, to fund a lot of these, right? And yeah, so you should start. There are good amount of support which are available over there, good amount of mentors who want to do that as well. But that is a gap which I want to be filled. I don't want 90% to be imported in India. That's it.
Right.
We want rather to be exported, right? So yeah. Correct. Himish.
Yeah,
Himesh, over to you.
I again, like as Modit said, I think I obviously believe it's a great space to be in, and that's why I'm here. So I think you have to sort of build conviction that you have the appetite for it, because it's obviously not easy, but the reward is disproportionately high. Right? I don't think ultimately whenever someone starts up, like you, obviously there's an element of wanting to do something good, and building your own thing is always rewarding, but ultimately you also want to build a large business, right? That's what everyone is after. And I don't think there is any other sector in India today which is as underpenetrated as healthcare, and also with a space that will grow as fast as healthcare. So there are these twin advantages over here. So if you figure out something that's good, if you figure out like the right product, the right service that you can provide, then I think it's a fabulous space to be in. And the ecosystem is also now beginning to warm up to this. There are lot more investors looking to fund healthcare. There's obviously a lot of mentors. There's a lot of startups that are now doing well. So it's a pretty good space.
Oh,
I just want
amazing.
to add one more thing, Abhishek, if I can
Sure,
totally.
sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
Right, just adding on to what Himesh said, healthcare is also a space where, if you are able to do it, the impact that you create is directly saving lives, right? In fact, we have seen that in our case, right? In fact, that is a very important OKR that we track as well, how many lives we saved. Well, that's what we wanted to do when we started, right? And now that this thing is going in every bed, there is chances, like there are cases like arrhythmia or something like that happening. This device captures it, escalates in early time. The person gets escalated to ICU in time, where every minute is important, right? Triaging or something like that, right? Really saves lives. I see that now. What Dozy could do, I didn't know 6 years back when we started what actually we could achieve today. I know if we are in 1,000 beds, right, we at least save 10 lives in a month. So that is the scale that it reaches. So what if I am in 1 million beds, and I know I'm going to save 10,000 lives every month, right? So that is the impact which can be created right away. So yeah,
So
as
one question I
Hitesh said,
actually,
that is the disproportionate gains which are there, right from business point of view, even from an impact point of view as well. If you care about that as well, healthcare is a perfect place to start.
amazing, amazing. So so one question that I missed probably, or I did not ask, like how many lives have you touched in last 1 year, Modit and Himesh? Just quick one, and I promise no more questions after this. How many
Uh,
lives have you touched in last 1 year?
So I'll go. So basically, last year we sensed about 30,000 patients, and 500 lives were saved.
Wow,
It was last year in COVID times.
that's amazing. That's an amazing work.
yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Himesh? You
So
have some
for us, that number is
fantabulous
around
numbers too.
10,000, Abhishek.
Sorry.
Around 10,000. Like 10,000 is the number of people we would have touched in some shape and form.
Oh, great, great. So I think that these are really good numbers for any budding entrepreneur who wants to start into this med tech area or healthcare side, right? I think, and both Modit and Himesh over here has shown that, take or no take, doctor or no doctor, if you have intention, if you have a niche, and if you are really very, I mean, particular about this segment and you want to believe in it, then you go for it, and you will definitely get a pie of it, right? And that pie would be much much bigger than you can imagine, right? That's what I can think of, right? With that note, I'll just would like to thank on behalf of ITB Alumni Association and Bangalore chapter. I would like to thank both Mudit and Himesh to for such a wonderful discussion, and to have taken out time on such a hectic schedule, to share your thought on the opportunities and the challenges in healthcare startup, right? We'd also like to thank Mr. Devis Khatu, who is CEO of IIT Bombay Alumni Association, for his continued support to Bangalore events. And of course, thanks to Smita, she has been very active, in fact. And I just wonder how she can be. She can chase any person, and she can get that person speaking so she's our chapter president for her help and support to all the startup tracks that has been going in Bangalore chapter, for sure, right? Thank you, Pramod, for creating such cool event posters, right? Sincere thanks to Divyam Goel, who is CEO of Attain You, for enabling us to utilize the Zoom Pro account for the event. We'd also like to thank all the people out there who helped us in publicizing the event, starting with Bangalore chapter area reps, who always help us in publicizing our events on our hyper local groups, our friends, our communities, and each one of you who have done so. Thank you, Gaurav Sinde sir, Office Executive IT Bombay Central Office, for his help in publishing this event through Bangalore chapter mailing list. Last but not the least, we would like to thank each one of you participants out there for taking time out from your busy schedule to attend the event. We hope it has been an enriching experience for you. We look forward to see you in future events too. There will be cool events coming up, and I think stay tuned along with Smita. We will be launching much more events every month, and these will be equally exciting and intriguing for all the journey of the founders. Thank you all, and have a nice day ahead. Good night.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Abhishek. Thanks everyone for attending.
Bye.
Bye, Abhishek. Bye, Abhishek. Bye, Mesh. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you, Mudal. Thank you.
Yes.